joining us is a man who has all the information about a massive ruling that has taken place. House versus the NCAA, House being a kid's last name, not the House of Representatives. Basically, this case was going to be the one that was going to bring about a salary cap for D1 sports. Judge Claudia Wilken has approved the landmark House versus NCAA settlement, which will usher in revenue sharing and roster limits to college sports. Roster limits, obviously a big deal because it's doing away with walk-ons. College sports and revenue sharing, big deal because schools will be paying players for the first time. To tell us more about that, ladies and gentlemen, the man who has the authority on all college sports, friend of the program, Pete Thamel.
Yeah, Peter!
How you doing, Pete?
Never been better, Pat. How about you guys?
You say that every time we talk to you, and I think it's that type of mindset that makes me love every time we get a chance to catch up with you. Let's talk about it. This House versus the NCAA court thing was supposed to happen in April. That was just a setup of a hearing. Now we have an actual ruling. What does this mean? How quick does this get instituted? And is everything fixed now, Pete Thamel, which is great news?
I wish everything was fixed, Pat, because it'd make my job a little more linear. I think the best way to look at the House settlement is that it's a completely new pathway for college sports to go on. There are still a lot of questions, and there's certainly still some skepticism on how everything is going to work, but it's a complete reset and reboot of the system. The headline is officially, formally, schools will be able to directly share revenue with players for the first time ever. Long obviously overdue, long anticipated. Friday night, 9:10 Eastern, Judge Wilken set that into motion. So it is a completely new era, which is exciting because the old era was a mess. But there's also going to be a ton of questions pushing forward, and there will be some hiccups. It will not go smoothly. I think that's the safest thing to say. Probably the most important takeaway of the last 72 hours, Pat, is that an enforcement entity called the College Sports Commission was formed, and about 3 hours after Judge Wilken signed this document, a high-level MLB executive named Bryan Seeley was put in charge of that commission. NCAA enforcement, I think everybody can agree upon, was a very futile and inept organization that was poorly armed and poorly executed all these NCAA investigations the last 20 years. This new College Sports Commission is going to come in and attempt to set and then enforce rules, which has obviously been one of your favorite words, Pat, a vexing issue for college sports.
I like vexing.
How that all comes together and how quickly it can come together are the issues we'll be pushing towards until the season starts.
So many follow-ups. We'll get into them all. The first main one there is the sports commission that you're talking about that has been put together. If people were to list groups that suck at their jobs, I think the NCAA would be in last in professional sports, and then the MLB would be right above it, wouldn't it? I think literally every other league would be above. Even the NLL, the PLL, you put Rabel in there above the MLB with how they go about handling their business as a whole. So when I see a guy from the MLB is heading it up, my immediate thoughts are, oh, great. That's great. Let's get the guy from the league that doesn't do good to head up this brand new thing. But everybody says this is the right guy for the job. I think, is that because he wants the job? And what type of experience does he have that makes us think, okay, he'll be good for the job? I certainly am happy that somebody's signing up for this role. I am happy that he has experience in professional sports. But the MLB is nowhere near a place where anybody looks at and says, yeah, that's the model on how we should do things. So just kind of why Bryan Seeley, and do you think he's going to be good?
Why Bryan Seeley is a good question, Pat, and I think that his experience as an assistant U.S. attorney in Washington, D.C., so he has significant litigating experience, and he can combine that, obviously, with years of running MLB's investigations. And so he has had his hand in two pots that are going to be applicable here. I believe he is Princeton undergrad, Harvard Law, obviously extremely intelligent guy. He had a very much behind-the-scenes role at MLB. So it'll be interesting because what his job is going to be in a lot of ways is he's going to be the sheriff of this whole thing, for lack of a more articulate way to put it. And he is going to be in the crosshairs. Everyone right now, we had 5 commissioners on a conference call this morning, is kind of linking hands and singing Kumbaya and say, we all need to make this work. And it's only going to work if rules are enforced. If you say one thing about the NFL, like you tamper and you're the Dolphins, there's punitive measures. And ultimately, he's going to have to be an unpopular figure in college sports because he's going to have to help set rules, put them in place, and enforce them with punitive measures. And those are going to be in regards to NIL deals that are outside of revenue share. And that's where the new tension point in the industry lies. Everybody can give away their 20.5 million how they want. I would guess 14 to 16 million of that go to football. But it's how these outside NIL deals are gauged, how they are handled and ultimately approved or not approved is where the tension point in the industry shifts.
Okay, so on that note, Tone is going to have a question about some deals that have already been negotiated, but let's talk about the deals that are supposed to happen in the future somehow under Sheriff Seeley's watch here of this sports commission. I guess it was all supposed to be market value, and there's like comps and everything, and they approve whether or not it's an overpay or an underpay. How is that possible in marketing deals? Because you are worth exactly what somebody's willing to pay you in marketing deals. Like, are they foreseeing a massive lawsuit coming down the pipe in that type of world? Or will Bryan Seeley be given the power or the unilateral power to be like, no, this is what this type of deal is worth? Because it feels like that could potentially, that's where it could still get ugly, right? That's probably the only thing holding it all up.
Oh yes, there will be lawsuits, Pat. That is for certain here. I think the key term, if we want to go inside baseball, no pun intended, is that the fair market value quote you just mentioned is not actually the term that's in the documents now. It's called range of compensation, and I think for the very reason of the legal ties to, they don't want to be the ones determining fair market value. So they're going to look at a range of compensation, see where this fits, and whether or not it is approved. It's going to be a lot easier to talk about these deals once we see them approved or not approved than in the theoretical. And nobody really knows, Pat, how it's going to go until the deals are funneled through the system and ultimately they are done. Now, one thing for the athletes that is a notable shift is that these cases, so say your deal is not approved, and you appeal it, it goes to arbitration. And the whole process of appealing and arbitration ruling is going to be 45 days. You were around the NCAA long enough to know, Pat, that like sometimes these things stretched years and years and years. So there is at least a focus on efficiency and a more nimble system, gauging what they're going to say yay and nay to, and what is a fair market, or what is fair and what is not. That is going to be tricky. Like there is no doubt about that. I mean, you obviously foresee a tension point there, and it's hard to blame you forecasting that in the future.
Yes, for sure. I didn't know defensive ends got $40 million a year. Did you know that?
Nope.
Did you know that quarterbacks get $230 million fully guaranteed? No, the market said they don't, right? Until somebody comes in and says they do. The market is always whatever somebody's willing to pay. You are worth exactly what somebody's willing to pay you. So I appreciate the fact that they're trying to put a cap on it. So, these schools with all the money, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
That's right. Of course.
The Oregon Ducks, the Texas Longhorns, the Penn State Nittany Lions, the Michigan Wolverines had enough millionaires to begin with. Then they brought in Larry Ellison as a billionaire to join them in that entire thing, let alone the SEC and what they've been up to. How are they going to be able to stop the NIL deals that are on top of now the school salaries from being absurd, which then leads to the deals that have already happened? Tone has a question for you.
Yeah, Pete. So basically the schools are now pay to play for the athletes. Before that, it felt like the NIL collectives were pay to play. So what happens to the NIL collectives? And then before this, people knew this was coming down, so they were front loading contracts for players this year. Are those contracts still good going forward? And what do you see going on with the NIL collectives?
Yeah, all good questions, no. So yes, there was a ton of front loading, and Pat referenced that date in early April where the industry thought a ruling was going to come. So the hurry up to front load has really been going on for a few months. And my understanding is those deals that have already been brokered are not going to be subject to scrutiny. So pushing forward, Tone. Sorry, I lost train of thought on your question. The second part was what?
What's going to happen with the NIL collectives?
Yes, sorry about that. So the collectives are still going to exist. I think ideally, when they started to set up this system, they set it up so that the collectives would no longer be part of the industry. But that's just not the case in a free market, like we say. So ultimately, I see the collectives becoming almost like marketing arms that are going to help players get deals. And if you have a professional one that falls within industry standards, that becomes a competitive advantage for you. So basically, all those teams that Pat just mentioned, the Ducks, the Buckeyes, the Wolverines, the Longhorns, etc., they are going to have access to more deals, and that is essentially going to give them an advantage outside of the 20.5 million and how it all works. But you guys are doing a really good job distilling where these tension points are going to come.
Thank you.
Because what they don't want is, John Business in downtown Indianapolis just randomly giving a Hoosier $3 million in a pay-for-play thing, but actually judging what is market range of compensation, whatever you want to call it, and what is pay-for-play is where this is going to be fascinating, especially if you're a private business, right? Which you can, in this country, do what you want to do. So there are tension points looming, and it's going to be Bryan Seeley's job to not only navigate, Pat, which I think is important, but also explain what works and what doesn't and why. Because the NCAA system was always very distant, vague, non-transparent. And this system, if it's going to work, has to be transparent. And then if people do break the rules and they're caught breaking the rules, there has to be punitive punishments in order for people to respect the rules, which was not the case in the old system.
So we happen to be athletes that do sponsorship deals. So why would we potentially be able to forecast what's coming down the pipe? I think because I've done all these things. I think because I've had to do all these. And I'm going to let you know that if I was a player and some company was going to give me $1.5 million and then Seeley's crew says $250,000 is what's right. That's a $1.25 million, hey, I'm getting screwed here. And that's just the way the world works. Like, that's loud. That's a lawsuit. That's some sort of... I mean, I don't know. And it's like, we thought that the revenue sharing was going to be the right play because now they have a salary cap and the schools are paying. So we know it's actual real contracts. We know that they're not going to get bamboozled. We know they're not going to lie to. But the fact that all the other stuff isn't like banned, and not saying it should be banned because guys should be able to collect their money however they collect. But the fact that that's still available, it's like, well, you still have the NIL problem. You still have the pay-for-play problem, but now it just has to be worded in ways that Bryan Seeley and the team say, yeah, it's okay. So it's just more paperwork almost as opposed to just the wild, wild west. Hopefully it's good for players. Hopefully it's good for teams. But it feels like there's a chance that we're still in the middle of chaos. As long as the product on the field matters and is good, that's all that matters. Now let's talk about another thing that was reported a part of this entire ruling. Go ahead, AJ.
Yeah, Pete, I saw over $28 billion in back pay to former players, I think going back to 2016. How did they come up with that number? How did they come up with the 2016 mark to take it back to?
Yeah, so it's $2.8 billion, AJ, and
you're right.
They came up with that number through a complicated system that involved metrics and income and chopping up different revenue streams that the athletes needed to be a part of. And I think this is all pre-2021, dating back a certain number of years. Unfortunately, not dating back far enough for you and Pat to capitalize on it.
It is. It does feel like bullshit. Chef Chang put this together. Feels like he was a part of it. Go ahead, Pete. Sorry.
And then how it gets distributed, and the people use Baker Mayfield. I see the picture obviously up there. He's obviously the type of high profile athlete who should have profited, and this is going to be essentially back for that. People talk about Zion Williamson a lot, maybe as a marquee guy who obviously could have commanded a lot of money for his name, image, and likeness during his season at Duke. There are economists and people a lot smarter than me working on how to chop this up, and there have been stories about like NBA locker rooms where there's like a representative and guys go around so guys can essentially like send an email and file for their back pay. So that is in motion right now. I'm not going to pretend to understand the math well enough to explain it to your broad audience, Pat, but we are in the midst and throes of that money being pushed back. That the 2.8 billion, AJ, is going to come from different conferences basically. So this is all a deal, guys, to just sort of keep college sports going and keep college sports on the rails. And it is an imperfect solution. I think we all know that. I don't think a random federal judge in Northern California controlling the fate of $1 billion industry is what anyone wanted, but because the industry had gone so sideways, and because the NCAA for so many decades hadn't been able to adapt and evolve, this is just sort of the drastic lightning bolt to pivot the conversation, pivot where the money goes. But anyone who thinks this is a solution and there's going to be a period of kumbaya after this is naive. There are going to be growing pains, and that they need people to follow along. This industry and the coaches in it and the schools in it have for decades, basically, when rules have been set, they have attempted to find ways around the rules. And the hope in the industry, whether it's naive or not, we'll see, is that now that there are rules and there is money available for everybody, people are going to fall in line and follow the rules. We'll see if it happens.
Seeley's got his hands full.
Yeah.
People always.
Amen.
I don't know how they decide what deal is good, what deal is not good. Because if you give let's say you give some percentage ratio deal to somebody and then you don't give it to somebody else, now you automatically start. Because what will they approve? What will they?
Each city is different. Now, each school is going to be different. Each city they live in. Does this guy have a million, 10 million TikTok followers? That drives the value up. Do they evaluate all of this?
Yeah, and what if you buy a bunch of fake? Hey, lads and ladies, I'm watching these softball players make $1 million too. I mean, all college athletes. Listen, you just go buy those fake followers. You go into court. This is what you got. Yeah. They can't say no to anything. They can't. I don't think they're going to have the power to say no to any deal. I don't know how you do without getting sued. I genuinely don't know how you do that.
I mean, certainly, Pat, I think there's an expectation that things are going to be legally challenged, and that's ultimately going to help form how this stuff goes. Yeah, my lighting's agreeing with me because it's blinking.
Yeah, that's it. Blink once if you agree. It's because imagine them turning down a deal. What if it's for a kid? Think about the story that they can paint. Okay, this Seeley kid comes from nothing. Mm-hmm. $1.25 million signing bonus available. Also getting paid from the salary cap, $500,000 or whatever from the salary cap for his job, because they're going to do percentages of NFL rosters and what they make. That's how they're going to end up making the 14, 16 million. Who's worth what? They'll be able to say this is equitable and everything like that. But some NIL deal is going to come in. It's $1.25 million for 2 posts or something like that. And then Seeley's going to say no. And then this kid could potentially have a lawyer say, this kid comes from nothing, was sleeping on the ground. And now he's got a company that wants to give him $1.25 million, and they're saying no, he can't have $1.25 million. Just think about all right, good luck, Seeley. I'm pulling for you. I'm pulling for you. There is a way to make money for your school, though, allegedly. Go ahead, con man.
Yeah, Thamel, everyone was reporting over the weekend that college football, the video game NCAA 2K, whatever, the newest one that's coming out this summer, will actually pay schools based on how much their school is used in the game. So the most popular teams, like last year were Ohio State, Oregon, they would get more money because more players online and things are using their team. In theory, does this mean if we all use West Virginia or Ball State that these schools could earn, millions of dollars because of that? Or how does that payout exactly work?
Connor, that's an excellent question. My instinct upon seeing that report was that it was a very wise marketing gimmick, because hence we're talking about it here on national TV, and it's a good way to incentivize fans to go and support their teams, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think the money involved here is particularly game changing or anything. I think it's sort of gussied up bragging rights, perhaps would be the best way to put it.
Gussied up bragging rights.
Hey, listen, we need Pat White and Steve Slayton back on the game.
Yeah.
We need everybody playing West Virginia.
Oh, yeah.
And we need to go ahead and run it up. We need to run it up. Pete, we appreciate you keeping us updated on all of it. It sounds like we get some more answers, and then more questions arise. That's college sports in a nutshell. How many lawsuits are going to be coming from the sports that don't get as much money as the revenue share as well to the individual schools themselves? That's probably something, too.
Oh, yeah. Well, athletic departments have difficult decisions to make, Pat, because if you're an SEC school that really values basketball, like non-Kentucky, and look, the SEC had the greatest single basketball season the conference has ever had. How do you, if you're an athletic director, do you chop things up to keep your basketball relevant, vibrant, and competitive in the most difficult league in the country? But at the same time, you can't cut into king football, which is why the NIL question really comes into refocus, because if you do not have if you don't have a lot of funds as an SEC school, because football's getting it, and rightfully so. They're the biggest revenue driver. How do you go find money to have a competitive roster? We've seen the headline about UNC's roster being around $14 million. Kentucky's is in the teens, or perhaps even a little bit above this year from what's been reported. So there's, the landscape has gone sideways with all this front loading. And the thing that I'm probably most skeptical of, Pat, is that all of a sudden everything's going to get right sized and people are going to make less. Like, we don't see in booming multi-billion-dollar industries people making less. So
what happened
eventually that's going to become difficult right sizing.
I don't want to do it to you, but CBA happened. AJ was pre-CBA.
Oh,
when the draftees used to just make like more than 10-year vets. Like Matthew Stafford got like $60 million or something the year I was drafted #1 overall pick. So they reset that market pretty quickly with the new CBA, and that just was like, well, your generation kind of just gets screwed by it, and then you move forward. It was still millions and millions and millions of dollars, obviously, but it was vastly different than what it was. There's a chance that there's a generation now of kids that are going to have to experience that, where it's like, if you were 2 years older, you would have got $8 million for 1 year, buddy, to go up to Michigan and play quarterback. But instead, they're trying to find those rules. I think there's a lot of chaos still to kind of figure out. Seeley's the right guy for the job. I hate being negative immediately upon seeing that he was from the MLB. I don't like that. I don't like that I was just immediately negative about that. But the fact that you said he was an attorney general, is that what you said?
Yeah, AUSA out of Washington, D.C. He spent a year at the Senate Judiciary Committee.
He's a big swing
his
dick.
Pure credentials, Pat, are extremely impressive. He's clearly a bright guy who has experience in the highest levels of courts and in the highest levels of professional sports. Whether that means he can solve this vexing college sports issue, we shall see. It will be a challenge.
All right, well, Sheriff Seeley's going to do a great job, just like the authority Pete Thamel always does. We appreciate you, brother.
Peter.